I'd only been living in Shanghai a couple of days before I noticed the Red Lantern house. It stood at an intersection where the taxis sometimes stopped at the lights, and sitting in the back of the car, I noticed the splash of red amidst the gray rubble of a construction site. The house must have been grand once, but by the time I saw it, most of the exterior walls had been torn away. Just one little corner remained intact with a ceiling and four walls, and over the door, someone had painted a banner and strung a row of red lanterns. Illiterate from the moment I stepped off the plane, I was unable to read the sign for myself, but later my friend Shouwei told me that it offered a wish to passers-by for a smooth journey through life. The house was the last remaining trace of a neighborhood which had been demolished to make way for more high-rise apartment complexes. I myself was living in such a place, a massive concrete development called Brilliant City. From my balcony on the 36th floor, Shanghai looked like Gotham City, a sea of monotone gray high-rises reaching up into the hazy white sky. I wondered how the people of Shanghai were taking to this new, modern high-rise lifestyle. They take to it like ducks to water, an English friend told me. Every day as I went past the site on my way in and out of the city center, I noticed the bulldozers getting a little closer to the Red Lantern house. Before I left London, people told me it was good to be going to Shanghai while some of the original city was still standing. But most of it was gone by the time I got there. I asked Shouwei to take me to an old neighborhood so I could see what it was like before the high-rises. She said, okay, but we better go now. When we arrived, I couldn't help but notice a large banner draped across the entrance to the street, which Shouwei translated as, "Cooperation with the government is important." And I reckon it said this because the other end of the street was adorned with a billboard image of the new high-rise development the area would soon become. Along the street, life carried on as usual, people buying and selling, hanging out their washing, chatting with neighbors, and so on. We stopped in a tea shop, and the owner delighted in telling us about the neighborhood's racy past as home to opium dens and brothels in the 20s and 30s. When we asked him about the new development, he shrugged and said, "They're employing migrant workers to pull down our houses and make apartments for foreigners." When we left, he gave us a bag of rosebuds to brew at home. After I'd been living in Shanghai a few weeks, I discovered that if I went to the park in the afternoons, I could hang out and watch intoxicated, retired people. During all my time in China, there was only one taxi driver who spoke English, and he told me something very interesting. When I handed him the piece of paper with the name of the park written down in Chinese characters, he nodded and said, "There you will find people intoxicated." I thought he meant drunk, but he explained that the park was where retired people passed their time. He said, now they're free from responsibility, and they are intoxicated with happiness. Retirement age people in China lived through the worst of the Cultural Revolution. Basically, they had a shit time that lasted for 30 years. Now they inhabit the parks, sitting in trees, singing, napping, playing chess. Some practice calligraphy with sponges dipped in water attached to long sticks. They write out beautiful passages on the pavement, working quickly to try and finish the ending before the beginning starts to evaporate in the sun. One group I met gather every afternoon to practice Chinese opera. I noticed a young professional woman sitting on her own. She seemed to have a lot on her mind. She sat for ages, and then suddenly she spotted me and smiled, and I realized she was going to come and sit next to me. She told me she came from a small provincial village a few hours from Shanghai. She'd been an English teacher there for 13 years. She showed me a picture of her husband and her son, whose birthday she said it was. She told me she'd come to the city alone to pursue her dream of making foreigner friends, speaking perfect English, and getting a job with Mary Kay Cosmetics. She told me she was very unhappy, and then she laughed. One day, from the back seat of the taxi, I glimpsed a young man in a pair of shorts sitting outside the Red Lantern house drinking tea. Is it his house, I wondered? Did he string up the lanterns? The lights changed and we drove past and out of sight. It took me a while to get used to the Chinese custom of eating dinner at 6 p.m. and drinking juice instead of wine, but after I did, I started getting up early, and that's when I realized that everyone was out exercising from the crack of dawn. Hundreds of people gather on the Bund, the riverside heart of colonial Shanghai, now adorned with the ubiquitous Mao statue. But people gather in all sorts of spaces, large and small, around the city: parking lots, pavements, schoolyards, high-rise lobbies. Watching people doing their morning exercises made me feel strangely happy, but also self-consciously alone. Yvonne, that's her English name, said she wanted me to come and meet her in town after work. She said she had something to show me. She came gliding out of a shopping center that could have been in Beverly Hills or Monte Carlo, all Gucci and Armani, marble and gold. I wondered what she could possibly want to show me here. She spun on her low heels and gestured expansively around, taking in the whole complex, and said, "I was born here." Yes, I was born here. Turns out that her family's neighborhood was torn down to make way for the shopping mall. She said, "Here used to be a tree. It was so tall I could touch the leaves from my uncle's window on the 3rd floor. When I lived here, I could afford everything on this street: snacks, groceries, little things for the house. Now, I can afford nothing." She laughed, and then she said it again. "I can afford nothing here." There was scaffolding all around a group of buildings across the road. She said, "That's the last of the old being torn down. After that, nothing old. Everything is new." Dorina, that's her English name, told me that she also grew up in the old lanes of Shanghai. She said that since there was no air conditioning, people would just move the entire household outside in the summer. The children playing, women gossiping, the men playing Chinese chess. She was proud to have been taught Chinese chess by her uncle and allowed to play this serious game with the men. Now, with air conditioning available in all the apartments, she said everyone stays inside and watches TV, and you can't find anyone to play chess with anymore. One night, on the way back to Brilliant City, I saw lights on in the Red Lantern house and 3 people sitting down to dinner. I recognized the man from before, and there seemed to be 2 women. The construction zone was pushing up against the far edge of their house now, but they seemed to be carrying on as normal. Showei and I decided to try and pay them a visit the next day. When we arrived, we stood on the path in front of the house and waited to see if someone would notice us. Almost immediately, 3 people came out to greet us. The residents of the house turned out to be the young man and his mother, and the second woman was a friend of the mother's. They welcomed us warmly, and as we had a camera, the mother asked if we would take pictures of the house for them while it was still standing. She told us that all the neighbors had gone, but that she wanted to stay with the house until the very end. We asked her about the lanterns, and she said it was important for the house to look its best in its final weeks and days. "There's a traffic light here," she gestured. "People stop their cars and look. It's important." We asked her what would happen to her when the house was knocked down. She said the government were rehousing her in an apartment about 2 hours from Shanghai by bus. Then I truly understood that the new high-rises weren't being built to house the people whose homes had been torn down to make room for them.